Alright, this video is going to be about why I think, public school has failed INTPs and maybe the public in general, and also why INTPs tend to do very badly in public school. And first, I want to start by saying INTPs do badly in public school mostly because public school is not engaging. INTP's learning style is more active and it's involved and they use a lot of critical thinking and logic, and when they take some information, it becomes, how does this apply to my life? How does this apply to anything? And is it true? You have to check its validity. And that's how they learn, it's an active, smart learning, instead of the process that's used at school is regurgitating, and you just memorize the facts, regurgitate it and circle an answer on a piece of paper, and that's it. It's not active and it doesn't stimulate your brain to think, and that's what happens is the INTPs are not stimulated. And oftentimes you may have a gifted INTP, a very gifted student, and they are overlooked because the curriculum is so boring to them that they just disconnect and just play with their thoughts throughout the day. And then you do have people who may be academically gifted who are better at, just memorizing and regurgitating facts, and those are the people who get recognized as gifted. But yes, yeah, a lot of INTPs are overlooked, and they don't do good with, pedantic details, and they are critical thinkers, and if they can't do that, then it's hard for them to learn. And it's weird because INTPs, I think, can get bored with things that are not interesting, and I feel like they're amused easily. I mean, they can amuse themselves easily because they think about more complex things, but just the simple things aren't really that great for them because it doesn't engage their imagination and creativity. And that's why I think the public school fails INTPs, because their intelligence isn't recognized, and they don't go anywhere with it. It's not able to be extracted because there's nothing interesting enough and stimulating enough. And the second part of this is I'm going to just talk about why I think public schools have failed us and people in general, and this is why I think I did bad at public school, and a lot of other people do too. One is, I was talking about, public school does not encourage you to do critical thinking. It does not encourage questioning. It does not encourage reasoning and creativity with answers. It actually, I feel like it discourages them, because all it does is you're supposed to memorize things that people tell you. People tell you information, and then you memorize what they tell you, and then you tell that back to them, and then they check you off as for being smart and intelligent. When I feel like just because you memorize things and are good at doing what you're told does not make you intelligent, and I feel like that is the kind of public school model for education, and it's almost more like an indoctrination. It's more like indoctrinating you to behave a certain way and think a certain way, because it teaches a whole generations of people are taught not to question. They are taught not to think about things, and they're just told to. They have these ideals, and they're kind of taught also from an early childhood. The people who are speak out and don't raise their hand and don't ask for permission, they get in trouble. It teaches you to ask for permission for things and to respect your authoritative figure, and you have to do what they tell you, and if you don't, you'll get in trouble. And then you also see that from your peers. You see that your peers will get in trouble, so it's kind of like a social conditioning thing, and it kind of just conditions you socially for when you get out into the world. It's not even really that much about educating, because pretty much grades K through 8, they could be eliminated, because it's like your brain learns so slow in that time period anyway. By the time you do get up to high school and 9th grade, your brain learns so much more faster, and I feel like you could compress pretty much K through 8th into 1 year and learn everything in that 1 year. I mean, because the only thing you really need is arithmetic, basic math and basic reading, and that's pretty much almost all you learn from those grades, and it's just kind of a waste of time. And then you have to ask yourself, if that's such a waste of time, and if you could reduce taxpayer dollars by cutting those years out, then what is it for? You know, It's actually to, assimilate children into this mode of behavior of listening to authority, and it's to assimilate them into society. And people are like, oh no, that's crazy. I mean, that's what it's for. I mean, think about it. And imagine if all those people just suddenly like came together with all those different personalities. It'd be like there might be some culture clashes. So if you get the kids in there while they're young and they're still very impressionable, it kind of teaches like a standard way of living, and it just kind of conditions you, and then it conditions them at home, and it's just kind of whole big effect. And yeah, and a lot of people, like, since this idea, like when I was in school, it's pretty much like taught that you should, or you go to school to get an education to get a job. That's pretty much like what education is for, just to get a job to live. And I think that's why a lot of people view education in just a regurgitating type of fashion, but education is way more than that. Like, learning helps you make informed decisions. It helps you find the truth about things. It helps you reason through things that don't make sense. It helps you avoid being taken advantage of. The smarter you are and the more you know and the better you can reason, the better you'll be in life, because there's a lot of people who will take advantage of people that don't know any better. And also just learning, you just can appreciate life more, and you know more about the world and more about yourself and more about the people in it, and it's easier to find your place in the world, and it's easier to find what you stand for, because so many people end up being unhappy. They don't know why, and they have this success for happiness apparently, and that's handed to them, and for some reason it doesn't make them happy because they don't express themselves creatively and artistically, and as a person they don't. It's like they kind of break your spirit, and like fitting in and assimilating is good, and that's what they teach you. They don't teach being an individual. It's more of a collectivist society where it's how can you benefit society, and you have to do things that other people don't like. I mean, you have to do things that people like, and you have to avoid the things that people don't like, because then you'll be shunned and an outcast and looked down upon. So it's most of it's just social conditioning, and pretty much I just want to end on, like, if school is doing this, if it's creating a whole, like, these generations of people that just don't question anything, like, they just learn the facts, and even though they may not be the right facts, they're just not supposed to question anything, and they're supposed to say whatever's told to them. And this whole generation of people who don't use critical thinking and critical reasoning, they can be taken advantage of, and they can be told anything and they'll believe it. And I feel like that's why, the media is there, because they tell people whatever they want and they'll believe anything, because just people don't question. And we're creating this society of people who don't think, and that's dangerous. People who don't think do crazy things because they don't think about it first and they just do what they're told. People who don't think are liable to do anything that is destructive and not productive for mankind in general, because that's just what they've told, and they haven't really thought about the consequences or their actions. They're just more worried about listening to the authoritative figure and not getting in trouble, and making sure that they get farther in life but that's not the recipe. That just leads to a life of unhappiness, and it leads to a life of mediocrity, and it leads to a life of servitude to whatever authority figure comes out there. There's freedom in thought, and there's freedom in critical reasoning, and and I feel like freedom is the most important, because the more you know, the more informed decisions you can make, and the more you know about life and everything else. So yeah, the public education system has failed all of us, and I feel like it's leaving a lot of smart people behind in the dust, because they just aren't able to recognize them in this system that just promotes factual regurgitation, and it doesn't promote actual sharp mental capacity and the ability to think on your feet, and the ability to see holes in logic that don't make sense. Until people learn this, I feel like people are just going to be taken advantage of more, and just lead lives that aren't happy, and just be unsatisfied. And just the more you learn and the more you question, the more you know, the happier you'll be. So yeah, the public education system has failed all of us.